the recording now. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. Myra and I will be keeping an eye on that. And we will go ahead and turn this over to Kimberly. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being here this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and so excited to see so many of you joining us today. Like Diana mentioned, we have been a partner with North Los Angeles County Regional Center for a very long time now, and we're really excited to be able to support and help educate on these two services. So a few things that we'll be going over today. Here is our agenda. We will be having time for a Q&A at the end, but if you don't want to forget your question, please enter it in the chat, and then we'll make sure those get answered after we end the recording today. And something I always love to start off every single meeting is our why here at 24-Hour Home Care, which is impacting people's lives by making a difference every day. So since we're going to be spending about an hour today together, I want to just share a little bit about myself so you kind of understand who I am and where my career has started and why I'm here today. So my why. So I started with 24-Hour Home Care 4 years ago. And prior to joining 24, I worked for a company that provided ABA services over in Anaheim and surrounding areas. And that's where my passion for the community we serve started. I met this individual named Braden. He had moved here from a different state with his mom because where they're from, the services are inadequate and not supportive in what they needed. And so it was really amazing to see what he was able to do in just a short amount of time with his mom with the right supports. That included ABA services, but also respite. And that is something that I spent a lot of time talking to mom about because she expressed that since she was the sole caregiver for her son, it was hard for her to be able to come back energized or re-engaged after working, also taking care of him, taking care of the home. And so that really drove me to look for roles and opportunities in this field. And I'm really excited because in the last 4 years, I've been able to help so many families do the exact same thing of receiving respite and personal assistance services, as well as others. So I wanted to share that a little bit about myself, because as we all know, a lot of times we don't know people because we've been in this pandemic and we haven't seen them face to face. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about my why. Now we're going to just jump right in to the services we're talking about today. So the first one is going to be respite. So what is in-home respite? I'm sure a few of you may have this service already approved, but I want to cover this for the individuals who may not have that or who do not fully understand how they can use this service. And so respite is used as a way to provide relief from family members who are primary caregivers to individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities. So this service can be one-time, sporadic, or regularly scheduled to provide that supervision within the home. Now, there's a lot of different terms used for providers, caregivers. More recently, we've heard direct service providers. And so for this, we'll just call them providers. But those are the individuals that either are agency staffed or family selected. I know North LA likes to use the word parent conversion. If you've been with other regional centers, you might have heard preferred provider, parent choice, family selected. These are all terms used to describe when families select someone from their circle to provide the service. And we'll be getting into that a little bit more later. But essentially, that individual will come into your home and help provide that supervision in the setting that is comfortable to the individual served by the regional center. So the goal is for them to be engaged in activities, have that companionship, while those parents or guardians are able to go rest, go do grocery shopping, be able to do a variety of things within or outside of the home, knowing that their loved one is being taken care of. Now, there are a few examples here of what that service could look like. So it could be companionship. Maybe you want someone that's energetic, engaged with your child, keeping them busy while you are out running your errands. Or maybe they just want to hang out, watch a movie, but you need that supervision to make sure that they don't leave the home or they don't go into the kitchen. So really, this service is meant to support that individual in the home, whether they need washing, assistance in the restroom, they need meals during that time. It really is something that is person-centered to that individual, but also supports parents and guardians. Next, we have personal assistance. Now, personal assistance often can be similar to respite, but has a very different purpose and outcome. So I want to make sure I go through with this as well. So personal assistance services are meant to support with activities of daily living to help individuals with disabilities feel empowered. So this is really a service that helps them get dressed for work or for school. Maybe they need help being transferred from their bed to their wheelchair. Maybe they need support with cooking or cleaning. And so this service can be very personalized and person-centered. So I want to go through some of the examples of what this could look like. Now, this service differs from respite because it can be in the home or within the community. So in the home, we often see supports needed with bathing or grooming, laundry, like housekeeping, getting dressed, maybe prepping for an outing. But in the community, there's a vast way of using this service. So often we see assistance with doctor's appointments. Maybe they need someone to help them go onto the bus for transportation, arrive, check in. Or maybe it's that they need help at the grocery store with their budget, with shopping. A common one I do see for young adults is with school. Maybe they're going to college and they need support in their classroom for that one-to-one of taking their notes, helping them prep their backpack to go to class. So again, there are a large amount of ways of using this service, but here are just a few that can really help you with determining what are your own goals for your loved one or for yourself if you're a consumer. All right, so this program also has goals and anticipated outcomes. And this is really going to help us when we get into how to request services. So Respite's goal is to provide relief to primary caregivers while providing supervision and companionship within the home. But personal assistance is very person-centered, so the goals and anticipated outcomes can vary about what you're trying to achieve. But the goal is that the individual is able to have their choice of whether to have services in home, in the community, or both, be able to participate in activities in a meaningful way and address their health and safety needs. So we really want to promote that independence in the least restrictive manner with this service. So the amount of support that personal assistant provider gives is going to vary from individual to individual. It's also going to encourage productivity, inclusion, and being able to determine what that individual wants to do in their life. And that'll really help provide a better quality of life that they are determining for themselves. So I always like to pause here because that can be a lot to take in. So in this next section, we do talk about how you request services. And this is really going to be a vital part to understanding if you feel that personal assistance is right for you or your loved one, how to make that ask. So we're going to jump right into how to request services. I'm going to give you 3 main examples that I have seen that have been really helpful for families, but you may have others. So if you have others, please throw those in the chat. It's always helpful for parents or advocates to provide that information because there may be something that you've tried that has been successful in requesting a service that I may not have heard of. But these are 3 that I have heard have been really helpful in really supporting individuals making that ask. So the first is demonstrate the need. So you want to share with your service coordinator why the service is needed. Maybe there has been a change of circumstances, and I'm not saying just external, like you moved or it's socioeconomic, financial, or otherwise. It could also be something within your nuclear family or with that individual. So maybe they are no longer a child, they are an adult and they need more support, and that would be personal assistance. Or maybe it's that there is a lot more going on because it is at home schooling, you need more support with respite services because you are now working from home, you are supporting individuals who aren't going to class because there is something going on at school and they need to be home for school. So you always want to kind of have those conversations of what circumstances have changed. But if you're new to the regional center and you're trying to make these asks, you can also just provide information about your family that you're comfortable with. So you can explain what that household looks like and what supports you may need in place. And that'll really help you and your service coordinator determine what the need is, whether it's increasing hours, adding an additional service. You always want to have those conversations and see what other information they have for you. Another one that you can do is express the anticipated outcomes. So that really touches in with personal assistance. So like I had mentioned, that is a service that is really outcome based. So there's goals you want to achieve, whether you or the individual served. So you're going to request services based on the outcome you want to achieve. So you can say, we really want, let's say, Jack to become more independent. He eventually wants to live by himself, but we want to make sure he understands how to do chores around the house, work the dishwasher, be able to do laundry by himself. And he really needs that personal assistant to help support him and learning that before he's able to move out on his own. So you really want to express what those goals are. And if you don't know what they are, start writing them out. What are your long-term or short-term goals? And what are ways that you can slowly break that down? And what service may that correspond to? And last but not least is ask for resources. A lot of times families rely on each other to get information or on Facebook, but another great way to get information about services, even if you currently do not qualify for, is to ask your service coordinator. They typically have a lot of different flyers, different paperwork that they can give you, booklets, and getting familiar with these services will help you in the long term of making a person-centered decision when making these requests. So let's say, for example, you have a young child who you're like, in a few years, we would like to get personal assistance in place. What are some goals that we want to start working on? And you can bring that information to your service coordinator. I also like to give the disclaimer that not every family is going to qualify for the same services. Your needs may be different than another family, even though you look very similar in age, in profession, or other things going on. It may be that you need a different level of care. So it may be that they have regular respite, but you may need behavioral because you're working on some things that are going on. And typical respite agencies are not trained to support those needs. So always please keep that in mind when requesting services, and always ask questions. Something that we often see is families asking, like, what other information do I need? Why don't I qualify for this service? And asking those questions are really going to help provide you with those resources, whether it's asking us or asking your service coordinator or your family focused resource center. So now that I've gone through some of these asks, we can do a little bit more question and answer later about specific questions you might want to ask. So start thinking of those. You can drop them in the chat as well. I'm really excited to hear if there's anything else that you've tried that's worked for asking for services. Next, I want to talk a little bit about 24-hour home care. Because we want to talk about the process that you'll go through when you are approved for these services. So I want to talk a little bit about what we bring to the table as a vendor. So our services are person-centered, and what we really try to achieve is to help empower individuals to live meaningful lives within their home and their community. And so this is really at the core of all of our services and the way that we make decisions to support our families and providers. So a little bit about that. So there's 4 things that I truly believe make us different. The first is we are a person-centric company. So we focus on our families and our providers to be at the center of all decisions that we make. So whether this is bringing on additional benefits or supports to really help providers get hired faster, or for our families to be able to access their services quicker, or determining, hey, EVV is rolling out. How can we make this process as easy as possible for our families? Because we know it can be challenging, especially when their primary language is not Spanish. Next, we want to provide that effortless experience. So we've partnered with world-class coaches to really be able to train our teams to support families and their providers when they call in. It may be a simple question, but we want to make sure that you understand your services, that you understand how to hire someone if you would want for parent conversion or get staffed with agency. So we really put in a lot of time and focus in that, and we always welcome feedback. If you do not have a great experience, please let us know. We want to improve and we want to understand. And with the feedback that you all provide us, as well as providers, it really helps us be a better company for you all. We're also going to be your service liaison. So I've talked about Respite and personal assistance. We also offer other services that I'll talk a little bit about towards the end. But we really want to be a multilingual, person-centered company. We want to focus in on that because we know that a lot of times you have different things going on with services. Maybe you have a IHSS, you maybe have other services through your insurance, then you're working with the regional center. It can be a lot. And so we really try to fully support with our services that are provided. So if you're referred for both Respite, personal assistance, and maybe something else, we want to make sure when you call in, all those questions are being addressed and you feel supported with everything. And last but not least, but we are vended with all 21 regional centers, and we serve nearly 10,000 families each year. So what that means is we take a lot of time and pride in being knowledgeable in this industry, being able to provide that information to you, your providers, or being able to understand better the challenges within our communities. And what I like about that is, let's say you decide to move. You're like, hey, I currently live in North LA County catchment area, but I'm going to be moving to the West Side Regional Center catchment area. What's great about us being vended with all 21 regional centers is if you move, we can help with that transition because we have an office there. So you won't feel like you have to call a new agency, you have to deal with a new person. We're going to do that warm handoff. So you understand that we're going to make sure that your services continue, that you feel supported, and it's one less thing on your to-do list that you need to go ahead and handle. Now, with all of that, I want to talk a little bit about the process. Now, every company may have a similar process, but I want to go through what our process is because it really helps you understand some of the timelines. Sometimes it can be frustrating when you're like, hey, what's going on? I don't really understand where this is going from, like me being referred to me actually starting my services. So this will really give you a good insight into what that process looks like. And it can differ from company to company. Again, everyone has different supports in place, processes, but this is going to be a really good insight into ours. So when we receive a referral from a service coordinator for a parent conversion. So again, this is when you have someone in mind you would like hired. We'll go ahead and give you a call same day, and we'll update your service coordinator as well. So if you pick up that phone, we're going to go ahead and let you know, hey, you've been referred over. Let's say your service coordinator is Jessica. Jessica, let us know you're approved for Respite and personal assistance. We're going to go ahead and send you over the application for your provider and provide you with our contact information. So your provider is really going to be the person completing the application. It is all online. We have it available in English and Spanish and Vietnamese, and looking to translate it into additional languages to really help support families. But they'll go ahead and complete that. Once they submit it, we'll go ahead and start running their background check and provide them a free CPR and first aid course. So both of these are paid through 24-hour home care. We want to make sure families have no issue starting services because they can't afford a background check or a CPR and first aid class. Typically, first aids by themselves can range between 40 to 80, and I've seen some go for 120 for you to do. We also offer a reimbursement. So let's say, for example, your loved one who's going to be applying wants to do it all in person. They don't want to do it virtually. That is perfectly fine. All we need is their certificate as well as their receipt, and we can go ahead and reimburse them. And we always try to meet families where they're at. So we understand that sometimes that's a lot easier than you being in front of a computer and completing that course. Once your provider is hired, we'll go ahead and notify your service coordinator and let them know, hey, they are ready to go. Can you please send over the authorization? That authorization will confirm the hours and if there's any kind of windows of when that service may occur. There may be times where you get additional hours when it's spring break or when school's out. So we always keep those to really be able to inform you of those changes. Your provider or parent conversion provider will receive a welcome email. So they'll provide that, which has the hours that they've been approved for, how to submit hours. We'll walk them through the EVV app. EVV has been mandated for all vendors, especially for the codes of respite and personal assistance. So what we really wanted to make sure is having that hand holding for providers on how to submit those hours. We understand it can be a little tricky, especially if you're not primarily English speaking. So we want to have that support in place. After that, if there's any additional hours added, maybe you'll need an additional provider hired, that'll be at no cost. So what we'll do is we'll hire them on and our team will support you through that. Any questions you may have, hey, my provider's leaving, I need a switch, they need to get set up with direct deposit, all of that's going to be supported by our team. Now I want to go over how this process looks like for our agency staffed families. We understand that sometimes families do not have someone in their circle who can support the hours. We completely understand. And so what we want to do is start to get that information about what individuals would be the best fit for your family. So when we receive a referral, we'll go ahead and give you a call same day as well. We're going to go ahead and ask you a few questions. So what is your preferred schedule? What's the best match for your family? Do you need someone who is high energy, someone who is more firm? Maybe you're looking for someone who is bilingual in Spanish because that's what you need. So we're going to go ahead and get that information, as well as information about the care of your loved one. So maybe it's that, hey, they do have some things that they need in routine. You can go ahead and provide that information. Or maybe you need to let us know that they have an allergy and here's how to go about that to reduce any exposure inside of the home. So we'll gather all that information and then we'll go ahead and start looking at the providers we currently have on our staff and who are available. When we have someone that we can match you with, you'll receive a provider bio. We can also do a trial shift or a meet and greet. So those are upon request. Typically, we understand that families are like, I don't feel comfortable with having a stranger here. Can you please help so that way we can meet them before? That is 100% okay for you to ask for. Please ask our team. They'll go ahead and set that up for you. If by chance we don't have someone currently in our team that we can go ahead and staff you with, we'll go ahead at looking at individuals who are being onboarded. So I want to talk about these providers that we hire to assist with agency staffing. They go through a very lengthy process to ensure they are able to work with the community we serve. So we do a national background check. They have to provide references. They have to have been in this field and working with this community for at least 6 months. They also have to do multiple interviews and go through an entire orientation course before they're able to work with our families. And we always ask that families provide feedback, whether it's, hey, this wasn't a good fit because they weren't energetic enough. Or maybe it's, hey, I didn't feel like it was the right fit for our family. They seem really nice, but I need someone who's more firm or who's more engaging. We welcome that because we can also train those individuals and give them feedback. So please always make sure that you are asking questions, you are providing that feedback and not being shy about it, because it helps us when finding individuals for your family. So those onboarding providers, we would let you know, hey, they will be on board in the next few weeks. And we'll go ahead and get you set up as soon as they're ready to go. If we have no one on our staff available, no one oncoming, what we'll go ahead and do is target recruit for your family. So we'll look at your specific needs, your specific schedule, the location where you're wanting services, especially for personal assistance where maybe a college campus or a day program that's not within your same city. We'll go ahead and look at that, and then we'll start target recruiting for you. We can never guarantee when we'll onboard someone, but you will never be put on a wait list. Our team is always actively trying to target recruit specific areas and onboard more providers to serve more families. So we're always doing this process of looking at families who need services, where they're located, and what staff we have available to get them started. Then when we have that individual ready to go, we'll go ahead and request that POS or authorization from your service coordinator. Sometimes they already have it in place and we can start services right away. Other times they wait for the start of the month, especially if you're transitioning from a different vendor. So please keep that in mind, that if you do have another vendor, but they haven't been able to staff you, we have someone ready to go and your service coordinator switches your vendor, it may start at the beginning of the month, which is what we typically see. Then you'll go ahead and start receiving services. So that provider from our agency will be trained on using our EVV system. So there's nothing much you have to do, but enjoy your services, whether it's respite or personal assistance, and provide us feedback when you have it. We always send out surveys to our families and rating us and giving any comments they want to give, but you're also welcome to do that throughout the entire time you're receiving services from us. And last but not least, I want to talk about when you already have a service with us and maybe you're adding another one. So I often see one of the services first referred is respite. So maybe you have respite with us and now you're being provided personal assistance. What does that look like? So let's say you have a parent conversion provider. What will happen is when we receive that referral, we'll go ahead and give you a call, say, hey, we received that you are now going to be also getting personal assistance. And we'll ask you, do you want your current parent conversion provider to be your provider for personal assistance? If yes, we'll go ahead and request that POS and authorization, and you'll be able to start services right away. If it's no, they're not going to be able to support those hours, we'll ask you if you want someone hired on. And then again, no cost to you, we'll get them hired, we'll get them started, and you'll be able to start using that new provider for personal assistance. Now, on the flip side of that, let's say you're like, I need agency staffing. If you have someone we're currently staffing you with, we'll go ahead and ask them if they have availability to accommodate that schedule. If not, we'll begin the process of identifying a different provider. And that way you'll have two providers that you're consistently working with. And so we always want to make sure that we're going first with what is easiest for you to start services right away. But we understand sometimes families want to separate those two. And so please let us know what your preference is and how quickly we can go ahead and get you started. I also want to go through a real life family served profile. So this can give you insight of how services typically run about a real individual that we serve. So their name and some of their items on here, such as their age or location, have been changed. But this is an individual that we do currently serve who receives personal assistance services. So his name is Anthony, and Anthony has cerebral palsy. He's 8 years old. And so something that his family was struggling with is being overwhelmed because Anthony cannot be left unattended. And so what they decided to do is find someone outside of their guardians and their parents to provide this service. So they identified their brother, Lucas. So Lucas is 18 and he is going to be that parent conversion provider. So he's going to need support. He's going to support Anthony with activities of daily living, having that structured morning, midday, and bedtime routine. And that's really going to help support his parents. So what happened when they were referred over to us? We gave them a call same day and provided that application to Lucas. We were able to go ahead and get him through the hiring process at no cost to family. So that background check, CPR, and first aid was all ready to go. And then he was able to start services within 2 weeks with his brother. And now that Anthony's receiving the support he needs, Lucas is also being compensated for his time. Something that's really big recently is that a lot of families are not trusting of individuals outside of the home because of COVID. But family members or trusted neighbors or colleagues need to be compensated for their time because of the rising cost of living. So we completely understand that. But this is a way that the family pressure can be relieved. Now, your specific regional center may have a policy in place about who can be that parent conversion provider. So always speak to your service coordinator about who can be that individual. But typically, parents and guardians are never allowed to be the support because it is meant to help give them some relief from services, especially for respite. So please always ask your service coordinator about who you can choose. But with these services, you'll have that individual service plan. So we'll decide what does Anthony really need during this time for personal assistance. So he needs that assistant support, he needs that safety supervision, and to be engaged in activities. We don't want Anthony just sitting there and not being included, feeling left out. We want him to have that inclusion, to be supported by his brother when he's out and about in the community or within the home. So I always love to share this because it's one of those examples that you may see is similar to your family, not so similar, or have some similarities where you're like, hey, this can actually be a service that might support us because I relate to Anthony and his circumstances. Now, I want to go over the other services I had mentioned before. So besides respite and personal assistance, we do have other services such as FMS transportation and daycare. Those two are reimbursement services, and you may not often see them because it doesn't apply to every single family, like I mentioned before. If you have questions about these, on the next slide, our office email will be on there. You can always ask me, hey, I want more information about this. But please just be warned that not every family qualifies because there may be certain circumstances required to be approved these services. I also want to talk a little bit about how we make things easy. So I mentioned that we really try to go above and beyond to put our families and providers at the center of everything. So we want to make sure that if you have a parent conversion provider, they can help with all of those services. And we'll go ahead and support the onboarding, the training of them, ensuring that you feel supported. We also want to have families who are multilingual feel that they are being provided the support they need. So our entire team is bilingual in Spanish and able to support in that language. We also want to make sure that we're integrating services. So like I mentioned, you may be approved one or multiple services, and we want to make sure you feel supported in understanding what they are, how to ask questions, and if there is a question you're like, hey, I really need support in working with my service coordinator, I feel like I might need an additional need, we can also communicate that to your service coordinator, but they will need to hear that from you. We often will notify service coordinators, hey, family is expressing that they may be approved for more hours or we'll be talking to you about it. Just wanted to let you know. Please let us know when those hours are and if they are approved so we can go ahead and get them started. You'll have access to our dedicated coordinators. So we do have a team, but whether you decide to go parent conversion or agency staff, you'll have someone assigned to you. So we want to make sure that you feel supported and someone that knows your case, knows what services you're getting approved for, or if there's a specific circumstance where you need to get services started a lot faster, you need expedited, additional follow-ups, we want to make sure you have that support person. And last but not least, we want to be a one-stop shop. So reducing the number of agencies that you have to work with. And that is why on here on the left, you'll see these services on here. We want to make sure that you feel supported and you're not having to call multiple locations, or coordinating is a lot easier when you have one phone call or email to send. Now, before we open up for Q&A, I'll go ahead and share how to contact us. So I always recommend, if you have not been approved just yet for a service, please speak to your service coordinator, because we don't want to start the process of getting you an intake or starting to hire a parent conversion provider unless it's been approved, because you may need a different level of care. So we want to be mindful of your time and not getting something started that maybe you're like, I really want respite, but you need behavioral respite. We would not be the right fit for you. So please always speak to your service coordinator. I often hear that when we get phone calls from families like, hey, my service coordinator gave me a phone call, an email, and a bunch of information, and I'm calling around. That is great to hear. We want to get those questions. So please do not be shy about giving us a call or sending us an email. You do not have to provide any identifying information if you just want to ask questions. If you want to ask, hey, do you have staff in my area? I'm approved for personal assistant services, but I need to find someone who has the staff that I'm looking for, please go ahead and do that. Our team will never ask you for identifying information unless you request us to notify your service coordinator that you've selected us for services. In that moment, then great, we can get you started. But again, please make sure you're communicating with your service coordinator, as we will, so that way we're all on the same page and there's no delay in services. So feel free, if you would like, to go ahead and take a screenshot of this, a picture. If not, I'll also be providing both Diana and Myra our information, our flyers. That way, if you want them, you can go ahead and reach out to us or provide it to your service coordinator as well. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop screen sharing. That way I can see everyone and answer questions.
I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording right now.